I recently made a documentary called Out of Office. This is the poster for the documentary, illustrated by my talented friend, Olivia Booth. I liked the poster so much that I wanted to use it for more than just the poster. I like the idea of there being an endless expanse of cubicles filled with workers standing up, halting their work. My idea was to show off the massive scale of the scene by moving a camera through it. The problem was that Olivia illustrated this poster by hand. It's 2D, and there are 9 characters. I wanted to show hundreds, if not thousands of characters. I can't draw. But I have watched a lot of YouTube videos about Blender, which is basically the same. So, armed with the kind of confidence only someone who doesn't know what they're doing can have, I charged ahead. For those of you who don't know, Blender is a free open source 3D software. The things people can do with this program are totally mind-blowing and absolutely inspiring. Flow just won Best Animated Feature at the Oscars, and a tiny team of artists made it entirely in Blender with basically no budget, rendering it all on a laptop. Basically, Blender is super powerful, and I'm trying to get in on the action. The main requirement I had for this project was that I wanted it to be completely procedural. I knew that I wanted to animate a camera through the scene, but I wasn't exactly sure where the camera was going to be exactly. Is 50 workers enough to sell the scale? 100? 1,000? I don't know. Let's build this so I can easily play around with the camera and find something that works. The Geometry Nodes workspace is a feature in Blender that I had no real experience in, but I was pretty sure it was the way to get what I wanted. But before I do much in Blender, I needed my characters. Luckily for me, Olivia provided the Photoshop file for the original poster. I isolated the characters onto separate layers in a new document and made some alternate versions of each character for more variety. I exported each character as its own PNG file with transparency, then imported those images as planes into Blender. I added those characters to their own collection, zeroed out their locations, then hid that collection from the render. In Geometry Nodes, I instanced that collection randomly on a grid of points. Selecting Pick Instance will do just that, and I can do some procedural art direction by changing the random seed until the characters are distributed to my liking. This math here is just to define the size of the grid, and it's all hooked up to this value control here to make it easy to adjust the factor of how expansive the scene is. So I've got a procedural, ever-expanding army of office workers. But they need to be contained, placed in their little boxes. Fortunately, a cubicle is just about the easiest thing in the world to model. I knew I wanted the cubicle farm to expand with the number of workers in the scene, so I modeled 2 walls of the cubicle to be arrayed adjoiningly, so I'm using the same grid as for the workers. When I increase the expansion factor of the scene, the 2 walls of the cubicle turn into a never-ending office floor on the X and Y axes. At this point, I can just start playing around with the camera. It took a little bit of positioning and refining of the focal length to make sure we didn't see that the top halves of the workers are just floating in midair, but we got there. I added some depth of field to the camera to give a tilt shift diorama effect, textured the cubicle with the Blender Kit add-on, and hit render. I brought this EXR sequence into DaVinci Resolve for finishing the color, pulling inspiration from the original poster's dire, gritty color wash. I added some sound design, titles, and boom, there's the promo. I moved pretty fast through this because I definitely don't know enough about Blender to position this as a tutorial. I just really like Blender, and I'm excited I was able to pull this off without too much anguish. Completing this project is motivation to keep going with Blender. I've got some ideas cooking. Thanks for watching. By the way, if you watch a lot of videos about Blender on YouTube, you start getting suggested videos of actual blenders